Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. At 12 p.m. on April 11, 2007, the 51-year-old father picked up his youngest daughter, Ida, and brought her home, hurrying to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Meanwhile, Ida ran around the house searching for her mother. Mom clearly said she would pick me up today and take me to McDonald's. Where is she? I want to see her, she called out while searching, but there was no answer. Soon after, Ida found her mother in the bathroom. Her mother was lying on her side in the bathtub, the upper half of her head submerged in the brownish-red water. Her black hair floated on the surface, the ends drifting towards the drain. At the tender age of 6, Ida couldn't comprehend the horrific scene before her eyes. She tried to wake her mother, but tragically, her mother could no longer hear her. The mother's death sent shockwaves through this family of 10. A seemingly peaceful home was thrown into chaos. A violent storm ripped away the facade they had maintained for decades, exposing shocking secrets no one could have imagined. Let's rewind to 2007 to find out what really happened. The story takes place in Pleasant Grove, a city in Utah County, Utah, USA. Known as Utah's City of Trees, it boasts a pleasant Mediterranean climate and beautiful natural scenery, making it an ideal place to live. Notably, the city has a strong religious culture, with the majority of its residents being members of the Mormon faith. And it was through their shared Mormon faith that the two main characters of today's story met. The female protagonist, Michelle, was born into a wealthy family in Concord, California. From a young age, she was the epitome of perfection. She played the violin, was the head cheerleader, and even reigned as homecoming queen in high school. With her talent, beauty, and affluent background, it's no surprise that Michelle became the dream girl of countless young men, a princess to be admired from afar, yet seemingly unattainable. However, everything changed when Michelle turned 20. At a singles party held by the Mormon community, she met Martin. With his handsome looks, Martin easily captured Michelle's heart. Like many young women in the bloom of youth, Michelle was swept away by love and eagerly plunged into this new relationship. Just a few months later, despite her family's objections, Michelle eloped to marry Martin. After their marriage, Michelle gave birth to 4 children in just 5 years, a son named Damien and 3 daughters. But for Martin, that apparently wasn't enough. He decided to adopt 4 more girls from Ukraine, expanding their family to 10 members. Despite the large family size, they faced no financial hardship. Michelle was wealthy and her husband was a doctor, possessing both prestige and wealth. Their family life continued peacefully, each member seemingly enjoying joy and happiness in a seemingly perfect home. However, behind this facade of tranquility for decades, the man at the head of the family, Martin, harbored a few little secrets. Was it because the marital affection had faded after years of living together, or had Martin become arrogant because of something else? Martin seemed to have undergone a transformation. He was no longer the loving, attentive husband Michelle once knew. It appeared he had grown tired of the woman who had been his companion for nearly 30 years. From the age of 20 to her 50s, time had been harsher on Michelle. She no longer possessed the youthful beauty and confidence of her younger days. This became even more apparent when Martin recently started hitting the gym diligently and lost around 30 pounds. It was then that Michelle realized the man she had once defied everything to pursue no longer belonged to her. From then on, Michelle sank into a deep melancholy. Because of this, she began to be plagued by bouts of depression and anxiety. But it seemed the one affected by this affliction was not just Michelle. On February 4, 2007, Martin, serving as a bishop in the Mormon community, announced to the congregation that he was suffering from cancer along with several other illnesses and had only a few months left to live. Upon hearing this, no one doubted his words. Over a month later, Martin's condition seemed to worsen. He now needed a cane to walk. Perhaps before departing this world, Martin desired to see his wife's youthful beauty once more. Therefore, he suggested that Michelle undergo a facelift. Michelle had always been compliant with her husband's wishes, but this time she felt deeply conflicted. She worried that her high blood pressure and her mental health issues could make the surgery dangerous. On the other hand, she longed for a new appearance to salvage her relationship with Martin. At this point, many of you might be wondering, if this man only has a few months left to live, is it really worth it for his wife to risk surgery just to please him? Don't be hasty in your judgment. Hold on to that question and let's continue. After days of contemplation, Michelle decided on a compromise. She told her husband, "I'll do the surgery, but let's wait until my blood pressure is stable. During this time, I can also lose some weight to make the procedure safer." However, what Michelle didn't realize was that Martin wasn't negotiating. He was issuing a command. He had already arranged everything and even barked, "The money's paid, the appointment's set. Do it or don't, it's up to you." Left with no choice, Michelle was forced to comply. On April 1st, Michelle attended her final consultation before the surgery. The primary physician, Dr. Thompson, noticed that Michelle was still very hesitant, but something seemed to be forcing this woman to go through with the procedure. After the consultation, Martin asked Dr. Thompson to prescribe several medications for his wife. What were these drugs for? You probably don't need to know the specifics. Just remember that the quantity of medication was substantial, and this will be an important detail later on. On April 3rd, Michelle was taken into the operating room. Her feelings at that moment were no different than 30 years prior, when she had recklessly eloped following the call of love. Michelle placed all her trust in Martin, believing that this man would bring her happiness. And she also believed that after the surgery, her husband would change and return to her as he was in the beginning. As the needle pierced her skin, delivering the anesthetic, she slowly drifted off to sleep. The surgery began at 8 a.m. and lasted until 3 p.m. Everything went smoothly, and Dr. Thompson announced that the operation was a success. However, prolonged anesthesia still puts a strain on the body, so the doctor recommended that Michelle stay at the hospital for observation overnight. Martin, however, seemed anxious about his wife and firmly objected to this, insisting on taking Michelle home immediately. After much deliberation, Martin reluctantly agreed to let Michelle stay at the hospital. However, that night was undoubtedly a long one for Martin. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, he rushed to the hospital to take Michelle home. At this point, Michelle's face was heavily bandaged. Even her eyes were covered. After the surgery, what she needed most was rest and recovery. That day, Alexei, their eldest daughter, who was studying medicine, took time off to come home and care for her mother. She stayed by Michelle's side throughout the day, only leaving in the evening. As she was drowsily nodding off, Alexei suddenly heard Martin calling her, telling her to go get some rest. Thinking her father would take good care of her mother, Alexei complied and left. Early the next morning, at 6 a.m., Alexei woke up and hurried to her mother's side to relieve her father. But upon seeing Michelle, Alexei was shocked to find her mother in an extremely horrible state. Her appearance was haggard, like someone on the verge of death. This immediately alerted Alexei that something was wrong. How could her mother look so close to death? Everything was fine last night. When questioned, Martin responded coldly, "She had a bit too much medication." This answer left Alexei both furious and worried. She knew very well that her mother rarely took medication because she was extremely sensitive to any kind of drug. As a husband, and moreover a doctor, how could her father offer such an absurd explanation? Alexei began to suspect that her father was hiding something. But at that moment, her primary concern was for her mother's recovery. That evening, while Alexei was helping her mother bathe, Michelle sighed softly and said, "Every time I wake up, your father makes me take pills. I don't even know what they are. Last night I threw up, but your father just brought more pills and made me take them." These words stunned Alexei. Why would a facelift require so many pills? Moreover, haphazardly taking medication can be life-threatening. She tried to ask for more details, but Michelle simply cried silently and uttered, "Your father doesn't love me anymore. Maybe I'm just a burden." That statement was both heartbreaking and cryptic. It left Alexei deeply disturbed. After this incident, Alexei devoted all her time and energy to caring for her mother, minimizing her medication intake and meticulously documenting the type of medication and the time it was administered. On April 6th, Martin took Michelle back to the hospital for a post-surgery checkup. Dr. Thompson reported that Michelle's incisions were healing well, her spirits were up, and she would soon make a full recovery. On April 10th, they returned to the hospital once again. By this time, Michelle was almost completely recovered. However, Martin requested that the doctor prescribe an additional 30 oxycodone pills. This was a potent painkiller that Michelle should only have needed to take 1 to 2 times a day during her recovery. Given her current condition, it was evident that Michelle no longer required this medication. Although he felt something was amiss, Dr. Thompson agreed to fill the prescription as requested by Martin. That afternoon, Alexei had to return to school to continue her studies. She believed that her mother's health had stabilized, so her absence wouldn't pose any significant issues. On the morning of April 11th at 8:44 a.m., Michelle called Alexei. In this call, the mother sounded extremely cheerful. She said that Martin had been treating her very well for the past 2 days. Her tone was as radiant as a young girl excitedly sharing with her best friend about the man she adored. Hearing her mother so happy, Alexei felt relieved and decided to focus on her studies. But only about 25 minutes later, at 9:10 a.m., Martin called Alexei from his office landline. However, Alexei didn't answer because she was in class. Later, when she saw the missed call, she found it rather unusual as Martin rarely called her. Moreover, he usually saved her number on his cell phone. Having to look up the number and dial from a landline raised a suspicion. Could this be a deliberate attempt to prove that he was at his office at 9 o'clock a.m.? Immediately after, at 9:17 a.m., Martin left a voicemail for Michelle. The message sounded very caring and thoughtful. "Honey, don't call anyone and don't go outside. I'm very worried about you, so I'm on my way home now. I've also prepared some sandwiches. We'll have a nice lunch together." That day, Martin was supposed to be in charge of a booth at the Developmental Learning Center's exhibition fair, but he didn't show up until around 11 o'clock a.m. His tardiness caused considerable annoyance and complaints from others. However, he seemed indifferent to these complaints, repeatedly emphasizing that he needed to leave to pick up his daughter and take care of his sick wife. Around 11:30 a.m., Martin brought his 6-year-old daughter, Ida, home. Upon arrival, he immediately went to the kitchen to prepare a meal. Meanwhile, Ida hurried off to find her mother, wondering why she hadn't picked her up from school as usual. But just a few minutes later, she ran back into the kitchen, pulling on her father's hand and exclaimed in a panic, "Daddy, Mommy needs help." Martin rushed to the bathroom with his daughter, where he discovered Michelle in a horrifying state. Her lower body was unclothed. Her upper body slumped into the bathtub, looking as if she had fallen in. Martin immediately told Ida to run to the neighbor's house for help, while he called 911. While speaking to the 911 operator, Martin seemed completely out of control. He yelled, cried, and even hung up several times during the call. In his panic, he also gave the wrong address, delaying assistance. When the neighbors arrived, they helped Martin pull Michelle out of the bathtub and began performing CPR. As a doctor, Martin took charge, instructing everyone. While the neighbors performed chest compressions, Martin took on the task of rescue breathing. But according to one neighbor's account, while Martin was blowing air into Michelle's mouth, her chest showed no signs of rising, a detail that would later raise their suspicions. At 11:55 a.m., the police arrived at the scene. They witnessed Martin shouting loudly in agony, "Why did she have the surgery? Why did she take so many pills?" He yelled and beat his fist on Michelle's chest in desperation, as if he had completely given up. It's worth noting that after the police took over performing CPR, a large amount of water flowed out of Michelle's mouth. This made them question, why wasn't any water expelled when Martin was performing rescue breathing? When asked what had happened, Martin sobbed, "This is my beloved wife. She just had a facelift and had to take a lot of medication during this time. Maybe she fell into the bathtub due to the side effects of the medication." Seeing Martin wearing a white lab coat, The police believed his words without further question. At 12:19 p.m., the ambulance arrived and took Michelle away. However, upon arrival at the emergency room, the doctors were confronted with a cold and lifeless Michelle. Her heart had completely stopped beating. The doctors were perplexed because typically patients who receive timely CPR will have a more pinkish skin tone, but Michelle did not. She looked as if she hadn't received timely resuscitation. Despite this, the medical team made one last attempt to save Michelle, but all efforts proved futile. Michelle had passed away. The words she had spoken a few days earlier now seemed like a grim premonition. At 2:00 p.m., Martin returned home from the hospital. When the children heard the news of their mother's death, they also returned home one by one to face the devastating loss. During this time, Martin asked Erin, his niece, to clear out all the medication Michelle had been using. His reasoning was simple. "I don't want to see these things anymore. They just make me more heartbroken." Erin, without suspecting anything, immediately complied, but afterward, she suddenly realized a terrifying truth. Those medications could have been crucial evidence. Erin confronted Martin, questioning why he had made such a request, but the man refused to answer. Not only Erin, but also Alexei, the daughter who had devotedly cared for Michelle during her recovery, discovered many unsettling details, not just the medication, but even her meticulous notes on her mother's medication schedule had mysteriously disappeared. All items related to Michelle had also been moved to an unknown location. This made Alexei inevitably suspect that her father was deliberately covering something up. It seemed Martin also realized his actions were being questioned. To prove his innocence, he decided to reenact the scene, describing in detail what he had witnessed when he found Michelle. "We must have an autopsy. Only then will people not blame me for your mother's death." The autopsy report later concluded that Michelle had a history of cardiovascular disease. The direct cause of death was drowning, and it was determined to be natural, but Alexei didn't believe it. In her heart, her mother's death was definitely not a simple accident. She suspected that her father was behind this tragedy. To demonstrate her stance, Alexei decided to change her surname, refusing to bear Martin's name, and declared that she would never accept her father again. Alexei gathered her siblings, and they united in their determination to uncover the truth and seek justice for their mother. The process of investigating their father led them from one shock to another. As it turned out, the image of a devoted, exemplary father that they had always revered was just a perfectly constructed act. The father they once admired was, in fact, a highly intelligent criminal and also incredibly ruthless, cold-blooded, and deceitful. Martin's entire life was a string of lies. Martin was born in Keyport, New Jersey. Unlike Michelle, a woman who radiated warmth and love, Martin's childhood was filled with misery. He grew up in a large family with 5 siblings, living in poverty and frequently witnessing his parents' arguments. According to Anna, Martin's mistress, he once proudly boasted that as early as the age of 8, he had tried to murder his mother and make one of his younger brother's deaths look natural. In 1973, Martin enlisted in the military. However, during the medical examination, the Army discovered that he suffered from a mental disorder. He had confessed to constantly hearing a voice in his head urging him to kill people. For that reason, the military forbade him from using firearms. After serving less than 2 years, Martin was given an early discharge due to his psychological issues. He deceived the military into believing he was incapable of studying or working, thereby receiving nearly $100,000 in disability benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs over more than 30 years. Martin even forged transcripts to get into medical school. A discerning eye could easily spot the falsification in these documents with just a glance. On February 21, 1978, Martin married Michelle. However, only 4 months after the wedding, he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for forgery, theft, and fraud. Despite this, Michelle decided to stay, believing she could change him. Afterward, they had 4 children together, but tragedy continued to plague them. Martin's mental issues not only failed to improve, but were also passed down to their children, manifesting as fits of rage and frequent threats of self-harm whenever they were displeased. In 1994, Martin was accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a patient. Michelle was devastated and wanted a divorce, but Martin threatened self-harm to keep her from leaving. In August of 2000 and 2005, Michelle discovered her husband watching pornography, a serious taboo in the Mormon faith they both followed. She once again proposed a divorce, but Martin resorted to his old tactics to make her stay. By March 2005, Martin began a deeper relationship with his mistress, Anna. During one intimate encounter, Martin choked Anna nearly to the point of unconsciousness. Not only did he act ruthlessly, but he also threatened to kill her, revealing that he knew how to use various drugs to make a death appear natural. Though terrified, Anna finally broke up with Martin in November, but very soon after, Martin found a new mistress online. 2 months later, they began an intense relationship. Willis, Martin's new lover, said, "We met a few times a month. It was all very spontaneous. Whenever we had time, we would arrange to meet. Almost half of those times, we were intimate." On February 21, 2007, on Martin and Michelle's wedding anniversary, their daughter, Alexei, accidentally discovered a suitcase full of women's clothing in her father's car. She immediately told her mother about this discovery. Later, on March 16th, Michelle and her daughters secretly checked Martin's phone records and found a strange number that appeared frequently. This led to a heated argument between Michelle and Martin. Soon after, Martin began using a cane to walk and claimed he had cancer, with only a short time left to live. However, Martin was unaware that Michelle and her children had secretly seen his medical test results. The truth was that Martin was perfectly healthy. He had no illness. Perhaps it was knowing this that pushed Michelle to finally agree to the facelift. In her mind, perhaps becoming more beautiful would pull Martin back to her, away from his mistresses. Under pressure from Martin, Michelle was forced to undergo the surgery, despite having high blood pressure and psychological issues. Just days later, Michelle died unexpectedly and mysteriously. Although there was no direct evidence, all signs pointed to Martin. He had ignored his wife's high blood pressure and psychological problems, adamantly insisting she have the surgery and requesting that the doctor prescribe 5 different types of medication. The prevailing theory was that on the night of April 4th, Martin began his plan. He continually forced Michelle to take the pills, even though she didn't want to. If she woke up, he would force her to take more, even physically coercing her. By midnight, Michelle had vomited up a large amount of the medication. Instead of stopping, Martin continued to force her to take more. By April 5th, Alexei found her mother in a very weakened state. She stayed by her side, caring for her until April 10th. By then, Michelle's health seemed to have significantly improved. But Alexei couldn't have imagined that just one day after she left, her mother would lose her life in the bathtub. This not only shocked Alexei, but also baffled Michelle's doctor. Although Michelle had a history of high blood pressure and psychological issues, she was otherwise healthy and shouldn't have suddenly died like that. Moreover, Michelle had almost completely stopped taking the medication. There was no reason for her to suddenly take a large amount of pills on April 11th, unless someone had forced her to do so. The biggest question mark remained with Martin's testimony. He claimed that Michelle was not wearing clothes on her lower body, seemingly that she intended to take a bath, but fainted, then fell into the bathtub and drowned. However, the account of young Ada, who was the first to discover Michelle, directly contradicted this. Ada was only 6 years old, but recounted very clearly. Mommy was wearing dark-colored athletic clothes and lying in the bathtub. It looked like she fainted and someone placed her in the tub. Could a 6-year-old child lie about something like this? Furthermore, a doctor who performed the autopsy on Michelle also discovered bruises on her legs and buttocks, indicating that she had died lying on her back, not face down in the tub, as Martin had claimed. All signs pointed to Martin lying. Even more suspicious was that during the 911 call, Martin stated he was performing CPR on his wife, but in reality, he did nothing. When the neighbors arrived, Martin only made a superficial show of effort. He even intentionally wiped away some suspicious bloodstains in front of them. However, no matter how strong the suspicions were, they remained just that, suspicions. Without concrete evidence, the police could not arrest Martin. Nevertheless, The circumstances were enough to prompt the authorities to launch a discreet investigation. Martin then held a funeral for Michelle. Outrageously, he blatantly told his wife's family, "Don't even think about coming. If anyone shows up, I'll call the police on them." However, a few of Michelle's relatives, including her sister, were granted an exception by Martin to attend. At the funeral, Martin didn't mention his wife at all. Instead, he talked about himself, recounting how his life was full of tragedy and suffering. He spoke these words with a deeply emotional expression, as if he were the one lying in the coffin, not Michelle. In particular, he had no qualms about laughing and joking with the guests at the reception, saying, "I guess I'll have to get used to being single again. I'll just have to play golf and hang out with my friends." After saying this, he chuckled to himself. No one could tell if it was a laugh of sorrow or genuine amusement. Michelle's sister found this joke not only tasteless, but also disgusting. Even more noteworthy, Martin even invited his mistress, Willis, to the funeral. Their relationship had, in fact, never ended, not even on the day of Michelle's death. After the funeral, Martin's attitude towards his children grew increasingly morseman. He kicked Alexei, the daughter who was always suspicious of him, out of the house. He simultaneously hired a nanny, but in reality this person did not perform any tasks such as picking up the children, doing laundry, or cooking. The nanny was none other than Willis, Martin's mistress. The situation climaxed on May 23rd, when Martin lost control and acted inappropriately towards Alexei. He grabbed her hand and kissed her, then feigned confusion. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I miss your mother so much. I thought you were her." In July of that year, Martin took his adopted daughter, Giselle McNeil, back to Ukraine. The plan was for her to stay for only 2 months, but in reality, Giselle was abandoned there for nearly a year, from July 2007 to April 2008. The real reason: Martin used Giselle's identity to help his mistress, Willis, escape tens of thousands of dollars in tax debt. Thanks to this, Willis not only avoided paying her debt, but Martin also removed a burden from his family. The following June, Martin called another daughter, Vanessa, to meet with him. Vanessa, who had long struggled with addiction, believed her father wanted to help her get clean, but the truth was far more terrifying. The father grabbed his daughter's hand and exclaimed, "I'm going to end your life, and then I'm going to end mine." Fortunately, this was only a threat. Martin didn't act on it. However, Vanessa was utterly terrified. The reason behind these chilling words was that Martin had always felt Vanessa was a disgrace to him. The story began many years earlier, when a young Vanessa had a child out of wedlock with her boyfriend. That child was Ida. To cover up this scandal, Martin decided to keep the child, but under the guise of his own adopted daughter. From then on, Ida was forced to call her biological mother, sister, and her biological grandmother, mother. All of this was done to protect Martin's reputation. In 2009, Martin was arrested for identity theft and imprisoned. During his time in jail, the police, along with his children, accelerated their investigation into Michelle's death. But in a case with virtually no concrete evidence, could justice be served? On January 16, 2010, Damien, the family's only son, took his own life by overdosing on prescription medication. In his suicide note, Damien quoted a line from an African lullaby, "Don't cry, mommy isn't here, but she will return." In the time leading up to his suicide, Damien had become irritable, short-tempered, and prone to aggressive outbursts. A law student, Damien had carried the pain of his mother's death for years. In truth, he also realized that the person who killed his mother might very well be his own father. Therefore, he couldn't live under the same roof with the man he considered his mother's killer. Perhaps understanding that convicting Martin was nearly hopeless, Damien chose to become the spark that ignited his sister's flame of vengeance. That same year, in October, Michelle's autopsy report was officially changed from natural death to undetermined. Dr. Dawson, who performed the autopsy, pointed out that the combination of different medications Michelle had taken could lead to difficulty breathing, loss of consciousness, respiratory failure, and coma. This meant that sometime between 9 and 10 a.m. on April 11th, Martin had returned home, forced Michelle to take a large amount of medication, causing her to fall into a coma. Then, he placed her in the bathtub and turned on the water, drowning her. In 2011, Willis, Martin's mistress, was sentenced to 3 years of probation for her participation in the identity theft scheme. By July 2012, Martin was released from prison. However, soon after, the Utah County Attorney's Office formally charged him with Michelle's murder. On October 17, 2013, Martin's trial began. The prosecution delved into Martin's entire past, including his mistresses, his daughters, his only son Damien's girlfriend, Michelle's plastic surgeon, and even inmates who had shared a cell with Martin, all came forward to testify. At this point, Martin had become a pariah. Everyone wanted to see him behind bars. The lead prosecutor declared that Martin had ample motive, opportunity, and means to murder Michelle. Meanwhile, the defense argued that a conclusion of Michelle's death being related to Martin could not be drawn solely because he had a troubled past. They even invoked a parable about a dog that protected a child, but was accidentally killed by its owner, emphasizing that the jury should not jump to conclusions and let emotions cloud their judgment. However, no matter how well the defense argued, Martin couldn't explain his disappearance on the morning of Michelle's death. His actions were highly suspicious, from pretending to have cancer and using a cane to deceive people into believing he couldn't move Michelle on his own, to lying to the 911 operator, causing a delay in emergency response, and then continuing to lie to investigators, leading to the initial conclusion of natural death. With so many unanswered questions that Martin himself couldn't explain, people increasingly believed that he had ample motive, opportunity, and means to murder his wife. After a 22-day trial on November 9, 2013, despite the lack of direct evidence, the court relied on witness testimonies, Martin's past, and the suspicious circumstances surrounding his behavior to conclude that Martin was guilty. He was sentenced to 17 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Upon hearing the verdict, Martin's daughters couldn't contain their emotions and sobbed uncontrollably. Although the truth was revealed, the price was heavy. Martin's first parole hearing was set for 2052, when he would be 96 years old. It was clear he wouldn't live to see that day. On December 6, 2013, Martin attempted to take his own life in prison, but was resuscitated. However, on April 9, 2017, after his appeal was denied, he succeeded in ending his life. Looking back at this case, Martin was the root of all the tragedy. Despite having a beautiful wife and loving children, none of it could change his inherent nature. It seemed that, to him, killing was not a grave sin. Even after being arrested, he showed no remorse, only regret that his plan wasn't perfect enough. His actions and psychology resembled those of a cold-blooded psychopath, devoid of empathy, remorse, or fear, only selfishness and self-love. These individuals, if not properly raised from a young age and without proper restraint, are highly susceptible to committing serious crimes. Martin, with his ruthlessness, truly believed that taking someone's life was as simple as mowing the lawn. He didn't see it as a mistake, and when he wanted to be with his mistress, he used a cocktail of drugs to make Michelle's death appear natural, instead of choosing normal methods like divorce or maintaining an extramarital affair. To him, murdering Michelle was an easier and faster option. For those with psychopathic traits, they are unable to feel the emotions of others and can make incredibly dangerous decisions without feeling anything is wrong. Cold-blooded psychopaths are not only ruthless, but also often possess a very high IQ. When they decide to kill, they usually plan meticulously, aiming to achieve their goal without being detected. Through this, we can gain some understanding of how their thinking differs completely from that of ordinary people. When carrying a genetic defect, they are unable to experience emotions like others. Even lie detector tests are ineffective on these individuals because they can live with their wrongdoings without feeling any guilt. Individuals with psychopathic tendencies also exhibit another extreme trait. They can achieve great things because they eliminate all obstacles to reach their goals. Regardless of whether the actions are unethical, illegal, or even life-threatening, they disregard them as these individuals do not value their own lives. Story 2. This story revolves around Joe Lo, a man of Chinese descent born in Malaysia. Despite his unremarkable appearance, he managed to date famous Hollywood stars, frequently mingled with top supermodels, and even publicly pursued El Vejizio. This man gifted an expensive birthday present to movie star Leonardo DiCaprio and invested in the film The Wolf of Wall Street, helping DiCaprio secure a prestigious Oscar nomination. Joe Lo could spend millions of dollars to throw lavish parties, attracting the attention of prominent figures. He could also invite the world's hottest artists to perform for him. Royalty from various countries were also manipulated by this man. He is Joe Lo, known as the billion-dollar whale or the scammer of the century. Joe Lo was born in 1981 in Penang, Malaysia, with ancestral roots in Kaohsiung, Guangdong, China. His grandfather, Lo Meng Tak, moved the entire family to Thailand to escape turmoil, and later to Malaysia in the 1960s to start a business, quickly prospering in the grain and mineral industries. Joe Lo's father, Lo Hock Pong, studied economics at the London School of Economics in England, and earned an MBA from UCLA in the US. However, he faced investment failures in the 1980s, pushing the family to the brink of bankruptcy. But in the 1990s, he rebuilt his fortune through the stock market, realizing the power of capital. To bring glory to the family, Lo Hock Peng's ambitions grew ever larger. The entire clan placed immense hopes on Joe Lo, anticipating his entry into the political arena. Therefore, from a young age, Joe Lo became the primary focus of the family's grooming efforts. Initially, he attended the Penang International School and was later sent to the prestigious Harrow School in England at the age of 15. This renowned boarding school was known for educating the elite. Many British prime ministers and leading politicians worldwide were alumni, earning it the moniker of cradle of the aristocracy. Joe Lo's classmates were scions of royal families and the ultra-wealthy, making him appear rather ordinary in this milieu. However, from a young age, Joe Lo was inculcated with the idea that these schoolmates were the foundation upon which he would build his future success. Whether or not one had money was less important than appearing wealthier than others. Consequently, when socializing, Joe Lo never presented himself as inferior and always spent lavishly. During a party, he met a fellow Malaysian, Riza Aziz, also considered to be of noble lineage. Joe Lo quickly became close friends with Riza. Subsequently, Joe Lo attended the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, majoring in finance. Here, he published several articles on financial knowledge, leading people to believe he was an investment expert. But in reality, he plagiarized the content entirely from Wall Street financial reports. Ho Lo was always eager to cultivate his image. He often drove a stylish Lexus convertible and spent $40,000 a month throwing parties, inviting almost every student in the school. His aim was to impress, to build the image of a wealthy young man. However, what others didn't know was that Joe Lo only paid deposits for the party venues and frequently became embroiled in disputes over unpaid balances. Joe Lo never denied rumors that he was a Malaysian prince. Instead, he leveraged these associations to selectively befriend the wealthiest individuals at the university, gradually building a high-quality network of contacts. Among them were members of royal families from Brunei, Kuwait, the UAE, and many other countries. Joe Lo was particularly interested in wealthy classmates from the UAE, saying he was fascinated by everything there. In reality, he was only interested in understanding the power structure and who controlled the finances of the country. That classmate introduced Joe Lo to the UAE's wealthiest families, and here he met a key figure, Khaldun, the CEO of the Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund, Mubadala. Joe Lo told him about numerous investment opportunities in Southeast Asia, particularly in Malaysia. And indeed, this laid the groundwork for his future plans. His trip to the Middle East was a resounding success. After returning to university to prepare for graduation, Joe Lo realized that only by controlling national resources could one truly soar and rise to great heights. Therefore, he established his first company, Winton Group. From its inception, the company's objective was clear. Leveraging his connections, he would help Middle Eastern tycoons invest in Malaysia and earn a finder's fee in return. In 2005, after graduating, Joe Lo borrowed money from the bank and rented an entire floor in Kuala Lumpur's iconic Petronas Twin Towers for his office. Then he began to seek out clients. The network of elite contacts he had cultivated began to bear fruit. His close friend, Reza Aziz, introduced Joe Low to his family. And Reza's stepfather, Najib Razak, was then the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. Joe Low understood that to enter Najib's inner circle, he had to prove his worth. And relying solely on his good relationship with Reza wasn't enough. In 2007, as Najib was preparing for the presidential election the following year, he planned to develop an Iskandar Special Economic Zone in southern Malaysia, with the ambition of transforming it into a financial hub capable of competing with Singapore. The plan was in place. The next step was securing funding. Upon learning of this, Joe Low quickly seized the opportunity, acting as a bridge and contacting Khaldun, the manager of the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. After a series of operations and assessments, Khaldun approved a $500 million investment and reached a cooperation agreement. Although this investment was not substantial and did not generate profits for Joe Low, he gained the trust of the Middle Eastern tycoons. Simultaneously, Najib Razak reaped the benefits of all the behind-the-scenes efforts for this investment. From here, Joe Low established relationships with powerful individuals and continued to operate his schemes under the guise of developing the Iskandar Special Economic Zone. At the age of 27, Joe Low began to earn his first substantial sums of money. During this time, Joe Low also met Tim Leissner, the head of Goldman Sachs Southeast Asia operations. Goldman Sachs is a leading global investment bank and securities firm that provides investment, advisory, and financial services worldwide. Both Joe Low and Leissner were highly ambitious and saw the potential for mutual exploitation, so they started planning their next move. Joe Low and Leissner executed a series of clever campaigns, successfully wooing Sultan Mizan, a wealthy member of the Malaysian royal family, to invest and establish a company with the acronym TIA, Terengganu Investment Authority. After negotiations, they planned to issue $1.4 billion in Islamic bonds. Joe Low intended to seize this opportunity to make a huge profit, but Sultan Mizan heard unfavorable rumors about Joe Low and prepared to withdraw his investment, putting everything in jeopardy. Just as things were about to fall apart in 2009, after Najib Razak won the election and became Prime Minister of Malaysia, he announced that within the next few years, he would transform Malaysia into a developed nation. This implied a need for substantial funding. Seizing the opportunity, Joe Low proposed to Najib that Malaysia should also create its own sovereign wealth fund. This fund could not only raise capital for the country's development and invest globally, but also serve the interests of its supporters. Thus, the previously issued bonds, under Joe Low's management, became the seed capital for this new sovereign wealth fund. Joe Low had successfully turned the tables. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, named One Malaysia Development Berhad, abbreviated as 1MDB, was soon established, with Najib as chairman of the advisory board. However, Joe Low was the one who truly held the reins. Joe Low discussed his ideas with Najib, suggesting that the fund could invest in green energy and the tourism industry, creating high-quality jobs for Malaysians. Additionally, a portion of the fund could be used as a source of funding for Najib's political goals. Joe Low also introduced Najib to Prince Turki of Saudi Arabia. Despite his royal title, Turkey held no real power and was largely under Joe Low's control. Joe Low proposed a partnership with the Prince's Oil Exploration Company, PSI, to jointly develop oil fields. In reality, despite having exploration rights, the company had only a handful of employees. However, Najib was unaware of the actual situation. Joe Low even induced Prince Turki to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to rent a luxurious yacht to host a party for Najib's family. On this yacht, Najib and the prince signed their first deal, agreeing to have 1MDB invest $1 billion in Turkey's oil exploration company, PSI. From this $1 billion, Joe Low began to execute a series of magical operations, elevating him from an ordinary individual to the upper echelons of high society. The $1 billion in 1MDB's account began to be distributed by Joe Low. Of this, $300 million was transferred to the Swiss branch of JP Morgan Chase for use in legitimate investment projects, while the remaining $700 million was funneled by Joe Low into a company called Goodstar, registered in the Seychelles. This was a shell company that Joe Low had previously registered for the purpose of siphoning off funds. Prince Turki received $76 million from this deal, while Joe Low continuously transferred and moved the money, with the $700 million ultimately ending up in his own pockets. Afterward, he used anonymous accounts in the U.S. under the guise of the Malaysian Sovereign Wealth Fund to transfer the entire sum to the U.S., officially becoming a billionaire. Flush with cash, Joe Low embarked on a lavish spending spree. He bought luxurious mansions, along with countless gold, silver, and diamond jewelry for Najib and his wife. He also acquired more properties, yachts, sports cars, and even purchased a hotel in Beverly Hills. To celebrate a girlfriend's birthday, he opened 23 bottles of champagne, each costing $50,000, sending the entire party into a frenzy of excitement. In just 8 months, from October 2009 to June 2010, Joe Low spent approximately $85 million. He realized that he could use 1MDB's name to access high society and make his own name even more prominent. Therefore, Joe Low frequently visited major casinos, readily losing $1 million without a second thought, or spending $100,000 to invite top American Hollywood stars to his parties. With his ability to splash money around like water, Joe Low was very well received in high society. Joe Low took a particular liking to Paris Hilton. To woo her, he threw 12 parties in 2 months, each costing over $1 million. He even opened a bottle of champagne, worth $2.2 million. Under the influence of his wealth, Hilton responded warmly and even publicly kissed Joe Low, but the romance was short-lived. Soon after, Hilton ceased all contact with him. On one occasion, Joe Low organized a massive party in Las Vegas, featuring A-list celebrities from various fields such as Kanye West, Bradley Cooper, Robert De Niro, Michael Phelps, Kim Kardashian, and many others. To build relationships with these celebrities, he even gifted a white Ferrari to Kim Kardashian for her wedding to NBA player Chris Humphries. However, they divorced after only 72 days of marriage, and the car became a contentious point in the ensuing property dispute. Afterward, Joe Low decided to venture into Hollywood, establishing a film production company. For Leonardo DiCaprio's birthday, Joe Low gifted him a Picasso painting and spent $600,000 to acquire Marlon Brando's 1954 Oscar, presenting it to DiCaprio. Joe Low also announced his investment in the film The Wolf of Wall Street with an unlimited budget. This movie told the story of a notorious investment firm that engaged in widespread fraud in the 1990s. The real-life inspiration for the story, Jordan Belfort, was arrested and imprisoned for fraud. Interestingly, at the film's project announcement event, Jordan Belfort was present and quickly sensed something was off about Joe Low. He had a gut feeling that Joe Low was a past version of himself. Once, while watching Kanye West perform with all his might on stage, Jordan turned to his girlfriend and said, "This is definitely a scam. He must have stolen that money. If he had earned it himself, there's no way he'd be spending it so recklessly." Besides investing in the film industry, Joe Low also founded a music production company with ambitions to enter the music industry. He intended to make Elva Shao a global superstar and invested $12 million to produce an album for her. In 2011, he spent a fortune taking out full-page ads in newspapers just to express his feelings for Elva Shao. He then proceeded to rent out an entire private beach in Dubai and orchestrated a fireworks display costing over $10 million. Although touched, Elva Shao stated, "He's just a really good brother to me." With just one sentence from Elva Shao, Joe Low instantly transitioned from suitor to good brother. These extravagant spending sprees allowed Joe Low to make a name for himself and connect with the world's wealthiest individuals. However, this lavish lifestyle and the relationships with powerful figures required enormous financial resources to maintain. In 2 years, Joe Low and his accomplices extracted approximately $2 billion from the 1MDBF fund, most of which was divided among them and squandered. Initially, Joe Low harbored illusions of making money from the film industry to cover the gaping holes in the 1MDBF fund, but the returns from film investments amounted to only about $150 million. This was far from enough to cover the money Joe Low had embezzled. Therefore, Joe Low requested that 1MDB purchase 2 oil drilling vessels from the company PSI for $2 billion to conceal the debts. Surprisingly, Although this idea was quite insane under the guidance of a high-ranking individual, Zhou Lo successfully executed it. However, the entire process was discovered by a PSY employee named Xavier Justo. Due to a dispute over the division of spoils, Xavier retained the evidence, laying the groundwork for the scandal to be exposed later. To continue raising money, Zhou Lo made every effort to contact the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, headed by CEO Kadem Al-Khabaisi. In March 2012, through Kadem's introduction, Zhou Lo invited Goldman Sachs Southeast Asia head, Tim Leissner, to Abu Dhabi to meet with Prince Mansour, one of the wealthiest men in the world, with a total net worth of $20 billion. Zhou Lo presented a new project to Prince Mansour, whereby Goldman Sachs would help 1MDB issue $3.5 billion in bonds to invest in thermal power plants around the world. Afterward, they would consolidate these power plants into a single company to be listed on the Malaysian Stock Exchange. It was projected that, after this deal, they could make $5 billion. The purpose of approaching Prince Mansour wasn't to ask for money, but to have his International Petroleum Investment Company, IPIC, guarantee the project. Since Zhou Lo had been introduced to Goldman Sachs by Kadem, and Kadem was close to Prince Mansour, the prince agreed to the deal. Subsequently, through various operations in 2012, Goldman Sachs issued $3.5 billion in bonds and received a commission 190 times higher than the standard market rate for bond issuance. However, Zhou Lo's real objective was not to invest in power plants, but to use the 1MDB fund to exploit the Malaysian people's finances. In other words, all parties benefited, and only Malaysia was being deceived without any awareness. After receiving this money, Zhou Lo employed his old tricks, transferring $1.4 billion of it to a company registered in the British Virgin Islands to withdraw the funds. Having successfully profited, Zhou Lo began bribing Najib and Goldman Sachs executives. In 2013, Zhou Lo once again issued $3 billion in bonds through Goldman Sachs. Both bond issuances were conducted privately. Goldman Sachs purchased these junk bonds at a low price, then used its brand influence to resell them to investment organizations worldwide, earning massive commissions in the process. Tim Leissner, one of Goldman Sachs executives, received a personal commission exceeding $10 million. Zhou Lo used the newly raised funds to help Najib secure his re-election as prime minister in 2013, and then rewarded himself with a private jet and a luxury worth $250 million. It is estimated that Zhou Lo embezzled approximately $4.5 billion from the 1MDBF fund. However, as the saying goes, you can't hide fire with paper, and such a large sum of money not being used for its intended purpose had long since attracted the attention of the media. In 2014, a whistleblower letter from Xavier Justo of PSI, along with the documents he had collected, were made public, causing a major scandal and attracting the attention of the US FBI as well as authorities in Malaysia. Over time, Zhou Lo's schemes were gradually exposed, and 1MDB's debts were on the verge of a crisis. The incident sparked a massive wave of public outrage in Malaysia, leading to protests and creating the biggest political crisis of Najib Razak's career. On May 11, 2018, Najib lost the election and Mahathir Mohamad, then 93 years old, returned to the political scene and was re-elected as Prime Minister of Malaysia. Immediately upon taking office, Mahathir ordered a thorough investigation into Najib's assets and the 1MDB fund. When Malaysian police investigated Najib's properties, they discovered goods worth $274 million, including a vast collection of jewelry, luxury handbags, and expensive watches, along with $28 million in cash. On July 3, 2018, Najib was finally arrested by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, but he pleaded not guilty to 21 charges related to money laundering and 4 charges of corruption, claiming the money was from political donations. On August 23, 2023, the Federal Court of Malaysia issued its final verdict, rejecting Najib Razak's appeal and upholding the sentence of the Kuala Lumpur High Court. Najib was sentenced to 12 years in prison and fined 210 million ringgit. Goldman Sachs also paid a heavy price, with its reputation severely damaged. In Malaysia alone, Goldman Sachs had to pay $3.9 billion to reach a settlement. Meanwhile, Zhou Lo, dubbed Malaysia's public enemy number 1, disappeared as soon as clues implicating Najib were uncovered. In 2019, Joe Low surrendered to U.S. authorities and forfeited $700 million, leading the U.S. to drop its arrest warrant and restore his legal status. In July 2022, through an intermediary, Joe Low offered the Malaysian government a settlement of 1.5 billion ringgit, approximately $348 million. However, the Malaysian government had previously sued Joe Low, demanding compensation of 15.85 billion ringgit, approximately $3.6 billion. Currently, the Malaysian government has not agreed to the settlement offer, and Joe Low remains at large. He has obtained a passport from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, which allows him visa-free entry to over 150 countries. To this day, Joe Low's whereabouts remain unknown. Some say he is hiding somewhere in Europe or the US, still enjoying his life of luxury. Others say he was disappeared and is no longer alive. The story of Joe Low involves many aspects of finance, business, and politics, making it difficult to explain succinctly. However, it is evident that the man known as the scammer of the century possesses exceptional talent, but in the pursuit of his interests, he became extravagant and corrupt. Ultimately, what fate awaits Joe Low? Only time will tell. That concludes the story for today. Indeed, true success is not measured solely by money and fame, but also by how we live and contribute to society. When pursuing your goals, remember to uphold your core values, and don't let the temptations of power and wealth erode your ethics and self-respect. Joe Low's fate serves as a cautionary tale. No matter how talented or powerful one is, all wrongdoings will eventually be exposed and consequences will be faced. Truth and justice will always prevail, and time will deliver the final answer. Story 3. Our story begins at Lake Hamana, the 10th largest lake in Japan, nestled between the cities of Hamamatsu and Kosei in Shizuoka Prefecture. The lake's southern end opens to the sea, creating a unique confluence of fresh water and salt water. This distinctive brackish environment nurtures a wealth of biodiversity. Lake Hamana boasts stunning scenery with its clear waters, and along its shores stand ancient shrines and temples. Perhaps due to a lack of widespread publicity, it remains relatively unknown, but this has lent it a particularly tranquil charm. Our central character, Tatsuya Kawasaki, lived in this serene region. He grew up on a mandarin orange farm in Hamamatsu City, the eldest of 4 brothers. As a child, Tatsuya was an innocent and cheerful boy who once told his grandmother that he wanted to become a masked hero when he grew up. However, as he matured, he gradually became timid and withdrawn, rarely participating in group activities and immersing himself in the world of video games. At the age of 32, Tatsuya worked in real estate. His family hoped he would settle into this career, but they never anticipated the shocking incident he would cause. On Friday, July 8, 2016, on the shores of Lake Hamana, Shizuoka Prefecture, a couple was taking a leisurely stroll. Suddenly, something unusual caught their attention. A flock of crows was circling low in the sky, and in the nearby bushes, a strange object vaguely emerged. Curiosity drew them closer for a better look. As they approached, the shape became clearer. Upon closer inspection, they were horrified to realize it was a human leg, half hidden in the undergrowth. A wave of terror instantly shattered the couple's pleasant mood. They rushed to the nearby Seijo police station to report the incident. Before long, several police cars arrived on the scene, sirens blaring. Officers quickly cordoned off the area, establishing a perimeter. The forensic examination began immediately. The severed leg was found without a shoe or sock, and no other belongings were found nearby. Subsequently, they expanded the search radius to approximately 3 kilometers and discovered other body parts, including the head, 2 arms, the torso, and the left leg. All were in a severely damaged state. Recent heavy rains in the area, coupled with the victim being submerged in the lake for an extended period, posed significant challenges for the forensic team. Although the victim's identity remained unknown, forensic doctors determined that the victim was a male, approximately 30 years old. He had suffered a deep stab wound, 20 centimeters in length, to the lower right abdomen, causing his lungs to fill with blood, resulting in death by asphyxiation. The time of death was estimated to be between 3 days to a week prior. Given the severity of the case, the Shizuoka Prefectural Police established a special investigation unit at the Seijo Police Station, mobilizing personnel from various departments to focus on this dismemberment and disposal case. Officers continued to scour the area surrounding the location where the victim was found and reviewed nearby surveillance camera footage, hoping to find clues related to the case. However, their efforts yielded minimal results. The victim's identity remained a mystery. It is worth mentioning that more than a month later, on August 31st, another victim was discovered in the same area. Another couple, while strolling along the shore of Lake Hamana, discovered several charred bone fragments. Through DNA testing, the victim was identified not as the man from the previous case, but as a 62-year-old man named Atsushi Sudo. Due to the limited remains found, the police were unable to determine the exact cause and time of death for this victim. Mr. Atsushi Sudo had been a truck driver for a real estate company and had retired 3 years ago. He should have been enjoying a peaceful retirement, but instead he had been mysteriously missing for the past 6 months. He was single, had no children, and lived alone in an apartment in Nishimacho, Hamamatsu City. The location and timing of the discoveries of the 2 victims' remains were quite close, but due to the lack of evidence, the police could not establish a link between the 2 cases and continued to investigate them separately. For the most recent case involving Mr. Atsushi Sudo, the police also established a special investigation unit at the Hamamatsu Central Police Station. It was known that Mr. Atsushi Sudo was a generous, good-natured person who always greeted people with a smile. Neighbors and relatives had never seen him in any disputes. The police learned that Mr. Sudo had a keen interest in motorcycles, visiting a local motorcycle shop every few months to inquire about the latest models. A salesperson who had known Mr. Sudo for a long time said the last time he saw Mr. Sudo was at the end of the previous year. At that time, Mr. Sudo came in with a smile, asking if the shop had any new models, and they chatted for a while. Hearing the news of his death, the salesperson was shocked and saddened. The police also investigated several employees of the shop, but all had solid alibis. Next, the police turned their investigation towards individuals with prior criminal records in the area and made a significant breakthrough. A 32-year-old man named Tatsuya Kawasaki came to their attention. He was a high school dropout who had worked at various companies, including a fertilizer company, a civil engineering firm, and a transportation company. His most recent job was as a real estate agent. A month prior, he had been arrested on suspicion of theft. Specifically, Tatsuya Kawasaki had withdrawn 200,000 Japanese yen, approximately $1,300 in cash from Mr. Atsushi Sudo's bank card using an ATM. Furthermore, he had forged documents to transfer the remaining 4,540,000 yen over $30,000 from Mr. Sudo's account to his own. The police searched the home of Tatsuya Kawasaki's parents and unexpectedly discovered Mr. Atsushi Sudo's personal seal, wallet, bank card, and many other personal belongings. In Kawasaki's car, they found Mr. Sudo's mobile phone and bloodstains that matched Mr. Sudo's DNA. These clues made it impossible for the police not to suspect that Kawasaki was closely connected to Mr. Sudo's death. With these suspicions in mind, the police immediately began investigating the background of this man. 7 years prior, at the age of 25, Tatsuya Kawasaki was an employee at a transportation company in Hamamatsu City. With his outgoing and cheerful personality, he was well liked by his colleagues. During his time there, he met Mr. Atsushi Sudo. Both shared a passion for motorcycles, and although they weren't close friends, they often chatted during breaks and occasionally visited each other's homes. However, due to his blunt and thoughtless nature, Kawasaki Tatsuya caused trouble at the company and ultimately resigned in 2013. Following this, he was unemployed for an extended period. Despite lacking a stable income, Kawasaki lived a lavish lifestyle, renting multiple apartments in Shizuoka Prefecture and spending extravagantly. This raised suspicions among many about the source of his finances. It wasn't until 3 months before the discovery of Mr. Sudo's case that Tatsuya Kawasaki returned to work as a real estate agent. Because he was currently detained in jail on suspicion of theft, the police refrained from immediately questioning Kawasaki Tatsuya to avoid tipping him off. On August 20th, Nakamura, name changed, a cellmate of Tatsuya Kawasaki, provided the police with a crucial lead. Nakamura stated that during a conversation, Kawasaki Tatsuya boasted about having killed an old man and a young man. His motive for eliminating the old man was to seize his apartment, while the young man suffered a similar fate for breaking into the home of his teacher, and he acted to protect his teacher. Kawasaki Tatsuya even described in detail how he disposed of the young man's body, dismembering it and scattering the parts in various locations around Lake Hamana. Afterward, a heavy rain conveniently washed away any remaining DNA traces. Kawasaki Tatsuya even sneered when mentioning that the young man had grown up in an orphanage, so even if he ceased to exist, no one would notice his disappearance. This cold-blooded attitude sent chills down Nakamura's spine and compelled him to report the matter to the police. If the old man Kawasaki Tatsuya mentioned was indeed Mr. Atsushi Sudo, then who was the young man? The police almost immediately connected this to the severed leg and other body parts of a young man found at Lake Hamana on July 8th. Because the victim's identity was unknown, the investigation had stalled, but now a new avenue of inquiry potentially opened up. The police investigated Tatsuya Kawasaki's social connections and focused on a longtime close friend named Yuto Damachi. This individual had a habit of posting on Twitter daily, but after July 5th, he had made no further updates. Yuto Damachi's age matched the estimated age of the victim in the first case. After comparing DNA, the police confirmed that the victim was indeed Yuto Damachi, 32 years old. According to the investigation, Yuto Damachi grew up in an orphanage in Hokkaido. Lacking the warmth of a family, he gradually descended into a life of crime as he matured. Damachi Yuto had previously served time in Kyoto prison for drug possession. Despite lacking family support in his life, Yuto Damachi was an influential figure on social media. He was a game streamer with a considerable following. However, he was later accused of being heavily in debt, causing numerous controversies which somewhat tarnished his online image. A female friend named Keiko, name changed, of Yuto Damachi shared in an interview that he had endured a childhood in an orphanage where he suffered countless brutal beatings. Even as an adult, his arms still bore the scars of burns and cuts. Unable to bear it any longer, he ran away to Osaka and later moved to Kyoto. Although he made some mistakes, Yuto Damachi also had a very gentle and thoughtful side. A year prior, Keiko had a falling out with Yuto Damachi, but just a few days later, she received a heartfelt apology letter from him, along with an invitation to hang out together next Christmas. On September 22nd, based on the accumulated evidence, the police arrested Tatsuya Kawasaki for homicide. The truth about his actions against Mr. Atsushi Sudo also gradually came to light. On August 20th, Tatsuya Kawasaki's supervising attorney revealed to the police that Kawasaki Tatsuya had confessed to him that he had dismembered and burned Mr. Atsushi Sudo, then disposed of the remains in Lake Hamana. On August 31st, the police found several charred remains of Mr. Sudo near Lake Hamana, further corroborating the attorney's statement. Although Kawasaki Tatsuya vehemently denied the charges during questioning, the police relied on the evidence to gradually reconstruct the events of the case. As early as the end of 2015, Tatsuya Kawasaki had begun planning to seize the assets of his former colleague, Mr. Atsushi Sudo. He knew that Mr. Sudo lived alone, had no children, and possessed substantial savings, making him an ideal target. Kawasaki spent a month and a half investigating Mr. Sudo's financial situation to ensure his plan would be executed flawlessly. He even sent Mr. Sudo's personal information, such as his bank card PIN, license plate number, and parking location, to his own email for safekeeping. On the evening of January 25, 2016, he went to Mr. Sudo's apartment in Nishiyama-cho, Hamamatsu City. Taking advantage of the homeowner's absence, he retrieved the key from the mailbox and made 4 copies for himself, just in case. He then carefully placed the original key back in its place to avoid suspicion. For days later, on January 29th, he broke into Mr. Sudo's apartment and brutally attacked him. He took Mr. Sudo's personal seal and bank card to prepare for the theft of his assets. At 3:30 a.m., a surveillance camera near the apartment captured Tatsuya Kawasaki leaving the apartment with a cardboard box covered with a white cloth believed to contain parts of Mr. Sudo's body. A day later, at 10 a.m., Kawasaki Tatsuya ordered new tatami mats for Mr. Sudo's apartment. When the tatami company asked if he needed the old mats removed, he declined, saying he would handle it himself. Inside the apartment, he carefully removed 6 blood-stained tatami mats, and when no one was around, he stealthily took them outside for disposal. He thought he had covered up his crime, but the surveillance cameras recorded everything. From then on, Mr. Sudo no longer appeared at the supermarket he frequented, nor did he show up for his dental appointments, which was completely out of character for him. Meanwhile, Kawasaki Tatsuya was busy transferring Mr. Sudo's substantial assets. On February 1st, he forged documents to transfer the ownership of Mr. Sudo's car to himself and opened a new bank account in Mr. Sudo's name at a different bank. From February 5th to February 14th, he successively took possession of the apartment, 2 motorcycles, 4,540,000 yen, over $30,000 in savings, and 200,000 yen, approximately $200, 1,300 US, in cash belonging to Mr. Sudo. In March, he even changed the account for receiving Mr. Sudo's pension to his own, further stealing nearly 170,000 yen, approximately $1,100, in pension payments. In late March, Mr. Sudo's younger sister tried to contact her brother multiple times without receiving a response. This unusual silence worried her, so she personally went to his apartment in Hamamatsu City to check on him. When she arrived, the apartment was empty. She only found a suspicious delivery slip with Tatsuya Kawasaki's name and address. She went to this address to inquire about her brother's whereabouts, but Kawasaki Tatsuya claimed that Mr. Sudo had sold him the apartment and that he hadn't been able to contact Mr. Sudo recently either. As for the car, Kawasaki Tatsuya said Mr. Sudo no longer needed it and sold it to him for a low price of 100,000 yen, approximately $650. Mr. Sudo's sister found these explanations incomprehensible but left helplessly. Kawasaki Tatsuya narrowly escaped suspicion, and he smugly congratulated himself on his clever scheme. It was this incident that emboldened him to commit further crimes. On April 21st, while studying to take the bar exam, Tatsuya Kawasaki fabricated a story while talking to his supervising attorney. He claimed he had purchased an apartment from Mr. Atsushi Sudo, but on the day of the handover, he discovered that Mr. Sudo had died inside the house. Therefore, he dismembered, burned, and disposed of the body. Kawasaki Tatsuya even confidently asserted that even if the police found him, they wouldn't be able to hold him accountable. Afterward, Tatsuya Kawasaki confessed his entire crime to his fiancée. He expressed remorse and self-reproach, claiming he was no longer worthy of marriage. His fiancée couldn't accept living with such a monster, nor could she bear the shame and disgrace, so she called off the engagement. In June, Tatsuya Kawasaki reconnected with Yuto Damachi, who was serving time at Kyoto prison. They exchanged letters, reminiscing about their old friendship. Although many years had passed and their relationship had faded due to various reasons, when they reconnected, they felt no sense of distance or estrangement. In a letter, Yuto Damachi asked Tatsuya Kawasaki to hold onto his belongings, and Tatsuya Kawasaki readily agreed. They continued to correspond until Yuto Damachi's release. After getting out, Yuto Damachi decided to stay in Kyoto, found a job at a factory, and started a new life. They exchanged phone numbers and seemingly rekindled their close, carefree friendship from their younger days. The fact that Tatsuya Kawasaki was holding Yuto Damachi's belongings became the pretext for their reunion. On July 3rd, the two met at JR Hamamatsu Station. Afterward, Tatsuya Kawasaki invited Yuto Damachi to stay with him at an apartment he was renting in Iwata City. They played online games together, enjoying their leisure time until the early hours of July 5th. Yuto Damachi was someone who enjoyed sharing his life moments on Twitter, and this meeting with Tatsuya Kawasaki was no exception. In the early hours of July 5th, he posted about his day, and that was his last ever post. After killing Yuto Damachi, Tatsuya Kawasaki employed a similar method as before, dismembering the victim into 4 parts and disposing of them. Surveillance cameras captured his entire disposal process. At 3:30 a.m. on July 5th, he drove away from the apartment where they were staying. At 9:30 a.m., he bought a large cardboard box at a post office near the apartment, then went to a supermarket to purchase towels, a car wash brush, plastic bags, and other items. At 10:00 p.m., he drove a car full of these items to Lake Hamada. He then staged a scene to mislead everyone into believing that Yuto Damachi was still alive. The next morning, a probation officer in Kyoto called Yuto Damachi to check on him. At this time, Yuto Damachi's phone was in Tatsuya Kawasaki's possession. After hanging up, he immediately texted the probation office, saying that Yuto Damachi was helping out at a friend's mandarin orange orchard and expected to be back in the afternoon. 3 days later, Tatsuya Kawasaki continued to fabricate a conversation, using Yuto Damachi's phone to text himself with the message, "It's raining heavily." He then used his own phone to reply, "Then we'll have to postpone. Let's meet another time." The following day, he sent Yuto Damachi's locker key to the factory where he worked to conceal the victim's disappearance. However, not long after, the police tracked him down. Initially, he assumed he was being arrested for homicide and even imagined countless interrogation scenarios in his mind. But to his surprise, he was arrested for the theft of Mr. Atsushi Sudo's assets. This came as a relief to him. During his detention, he quickly befriended his cellmates and even boasted about having taken 2 lives. He also described in detail how he studied the location of surveillance cameras in the parking lot and other preparations he made. This very act became a crucial lead that helped the police solve the case. After a thorough investigation and gathering of evidence, the police concluded that Yuto Damachi was murdered by Tatsuya Kawasaki with a knife. A financial dispute may have been one of the motives leading to this tragedy. According to a friend of Yuto Damachi, Tatsuya Kawasaki had borrowed money from Yuto Damachi several times but failed to repay it. This time, Yuto Damachi agreed to meet Tatsuya Kawasaki at Hamamatsu Station not only to retrieve his belongings but also to reclaim the money he was owed. As for Tatsuya Kawasaki's claim to his cellmate that he acted to protect his teacher, it was a complete fabrication. A year and a half after the incident, Tatsuya Kawasaki's trial began at the Shizuoka District Court. Defendant Tatsuya Kawasaki was charged with 11 counts, including homicide. At the trial, defendant Tatsuya Kawasaki vehemently pleaded not guilty and denied all charges. Relatives and friends of both victims were present in court. They were outraged and demanded the death penalty for Tatsuya Kawasaki. The prosecutor pointed out that although the murder weapon in both cases had not been found, the police had collected over 150 pieces of related evidence from Tatsuya Kawasaki's home, his parents' home, his car, and from surveillance footage. DNA test results also showed that the bloodstains belonged to the 2 victims, Atsushi Sudo and Yuto Damachi. The fact that the defendant revealed details of the case to his cellmate Nakamura and his supervising attorney perfectly matched the actual events of the case, further confirming him as the culprit. In addition, before Mr. Atsushi Sudo's death, the defendant had planned to gather information about the victim's assets, clearly demonstrating his intent. As for the motive for killing Yuto Damachi, although it was not fully clarified, the fact that the defendant deliberately concealed the victim's disappearance and had a history of accumulating significant debt made him the prime suspect in the case. The defense attorney presented a different perspective, arguing that the defendant and Yuto Damachi had a good relationship and had never had any altercations. Killing Yuto Damachi brought no benefit to the defendant. Currently, the murder weapon has not been found, and physical evidence such as bloodstains at the scene can only be considered circumstantial evidence. Furthermore, due to the lack of a clear motive, the defense attorney argued that based on the available evidence alone, it could not be definitively concluded that the defendant was 100% guilty. After a month-long trial, the court found the defendant, Tatsuya Kawasaki, guilty of murder and other charges. Upon hearing the verdict, Kawasaki Tatsuya maintained a calm demeanor, showing no signs of fear or remorse, and was merely focused on writing something in his notebook. He later expressed his dissatisfaction with the verdict and appealed. A year later, in 2019, the appeal hearing was held at the Tokyo High Court. The High Court upheld the lower court's ruling. The judge declared that the defendant had demonstrated a blatant disregard for human life, and his series of criminal acts were cruel and vicious, making the death penalty unavoidable. Kawasaki Tatsuya remained defiant and continued to appeal to the Supreme Court of Japan. However, 2 days before the final hearing, he unexpectedly withdrew his appeal and accepted the death sentence. He told his defense attorney that he was satisfied with this outcome and also sent a message to a friend of Mr. Atsushi Sudo, stating that he should take responsibility for the crimes he had committed. In a subsequent interview, this friend said that Kawasaki Tatsuya expressed a desire to visit the crime scene to apologize to Mr. Atsushi Sudo's spirit. However, he still found Kawasaki Tatsuya's sudden change of heart perplexing. Since Kawasaki Tatsuya had maintained his silence throughout the trial, many details of the case remained unclear. For instance, how did he kill the victims? What was his motive for killing Yuto Damachi? These crucial questions remained unanswered. Moreover, the credibility of the cellmate Nakamura's testimony was also questioned. The defense attorney had argued in court that Nakamura had a conflict with the police, and Kawasaki Tatsuya had sided with the police, causing Nakamura to harbor resentment towards him. However, Nakamura denied this claim. The relationship between Tatsuya Kawasaki and Yuto Damachi also held many suspicious points. In fact, their meeting in Iwata City was coerced by Kawasaki Tatsuya. According to the information obtained, Kawasaki Tatsuya threatened Yuto Damachi that if he didn't come to collect his belongings, he would throw them all away, forcing Yuto Damachi to agree to meet. The reason why Yuto Damachi didn't want to meet Kawasaki Tatsuya remains a mystery. Kawasaki Tatsuya's criminal history is chilling. He had been arrested a total of 5 times, including suspicion of theft and the 2 murders. In 2014, he also vandalized the windows of 17 cars, causing property damage, leading to suspicions that he may have committed other crimes that have yet to be uncovered. To this day, Tatsuya Kawasaki remains in detention at the Tokyo Detention House, under strict supervision while awaiting his execution. Story 4. Zhao Wei, a talented actress who displayed her artistic flair from the age of 15, rose to fame across mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong for her iconic role in the TV series My Fair Princess. Her acting career flourished and she later became a billionaire through financial investments. However, why did such a renowned star suddenly get blacklisted and completely disappear from the entertainment industry? This remains a question on many people's minds. Zhao Wei, a name that once dominated the Chinese screen. Few know that this woman, born in 1976, had a turbulent childhood. She was born into a family of 4 in Anhui, China. Zhao Wei's childhood was closely tied to her hardworking grandmother, who shouldered the family's burdens after her grandfather tragically died during an uprising. Zhao Wei grew up under her grandmother's loving care, helping her at the water supply station. She soon captivated people with her adorable appearance, large round eyes, and outgoing, lively personality. Her parents, with their liberal approach to education, raised a fearless Zhao Wei, even earning her the nickname Tomboy from neighbors due to her mischievous and energetic nature. Zhao Wei's childhood was also marked by frequent school changes due to her parents' jobs. While her academic performance was unremarkable, her artistic talent shone brightly. At 15, Zhao Wei entered the Wuhu Normal School, where she began her journey into the world of acting and dance. Just 2 years later, opportunity knocked for the passionate young woman. Zhao Wei was cast in Zhang Yimou's film Painted Skin, a crucial stepping stone that opened the doors to her cinematic career. After graduating from the normal school, Zhao Wei continued to pursue her acting dreams by gaining admission to the prestigious Performance Institute of the Beijing Film Academy. There, she befriended future stars like Wang Xiaoming and Chen Kuan. Wang Xiaoming even confessed to the media about his unrequited love for his talented classmate, Zhao Wei. During her university years, Zhao Wei appeared in several films, such as East Palace, West Palace, and Magic Formula. However, The biggest turning point in the Anhui native's career came from a popular historical drama in the late 90s, My Fair Princess. In 1997, Zhao Wei, then just a sophomore, was chosen to play the lead role of Zhao Yanzi, Little Swallow, in My Fair Princess. A spirited and rebellious orphan, Zhao Yanzi unexpectedly becomes a princess in the Forbidden City due to a hilarious misunderstanding. From then on, Zhao Yanzi's life changes completely, filled with dramatic confrontations with the cruel wet nurse Rome. The series quickly became a phenomenon, sweeping across mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and even Vietnam, catapulting the young cast, including Zhao Wei, to new heights of fame. The My Fair Princess craze was not limited to mainland China, but also extended to Hong Kong, where ATV purchased the broadcasting rights and achieved record-breaking viewership ratings. Riding the wave of success, the second season of the series created an equally powerful impact, solidifying 23-year-old Zhao Wei's status as a highly sought-after star. Zhao Yanzi became a phenomenon, an icon of youth, rebellion, and individuality. Major media outlets like the People's Daily and Beijing Youth Daily continuously covered the story, propelling Zhao Wei to the peak of her career. However, success often comes hand in hand with challenges. After My Fair Princess, Zhao Wei continued to appear in several period dramas, leading to public concern that she would be typecast in pampered princess roles. But Zhao Wei was not one to be easily defeated. She decided to transform her image, venturing into the music industry and releasing her debut album, Swallow Zhao Yanzi. Zhao Wei's career continued its upward trajectory as she returned to the big screen with diverse and impressive roles. In 2000, she starred alongside big names like Andy Lau, He Chin-chang, and Nick Chung in the martial arts film The Duel, a commercial success. In 2001, Zhao Wei had a major breakthrough when she collaborated with comedy king Stephen Chow in Shaolin Soccer. She shed her usual beautiful image to play Mei, a girl with an unattractive appearance, sporting messy hair and a face full of acne. Stephen Chow's iconic line to her in the film Go Back to Mars, "Earth is too dangerous for you," became one of the most frequently quoted lines. In the 2000s, Zhao Wei continued to solidify her position in the Chinese film industry with many high-quality works. In 2012, she tried her hand at directing with the film So Young, a critical and commercial success that garnered her numerous prestigious awards. 2 years later, she continued to shine with her performance in Dearest, winning Best Actress at the 34th Hong Kong Film Awards. In 2015, Zhao Wei starred in the drama A Tiger Mom, a production that sparked much debate about education in China but quickly became the hottest TV series of the year. Beyond her on-screen success, Zhao Wei also demonstrated her compassion by donating 23 million yuan to children with leukemia. It seemed that Zhao Wei's career would continue its meteoric rise, but no one could have predicted that, in 2021, everything would change overnight. At that time, Zhao Wei was at the peak of her career, her image always brimming with positive energy. But who could have imagined that overnight in 2021, everything would come crashing down? In August 2021, a shocking event occurred, sending shockwaves through the Chinese entertainment industry. Zhao Wei's works suddenly vanished from major film and television websites in mainland China. Her name, like a fleeting gust of wind, disappeared from all cast lists from all the films that had made her famous. Even the TV series The Best Partner, in which she starred alongside her close friend Huang Xiaoming, was indefinitely postponed and her role was unceremoniously recast. Friends and colleagues who were once close to her now turned their backs, hastily erasing all traces of their relationship with Zhao Wei. Even Huang Xiaoming, her close friend for many years, was no exception. But what's worth noting is that unlike other artists who were blacklisted around the same time, such as Chris Wu with his more than 2-minute scandal, or Jing Shuang with her surrogacy case, no specific charges against Zhao Wei were ever publicly announced. The eerie silence from the official media only fueled the rapid spread of rumors about her. Some Chinese netizens began to dig up past events involving Zhao Wei. They recalled the incident in 2001 when she wore a dress featuring a design similar to the Japanese rising sun flag while shooting for an American magazine, accusing her of insulting China. Furthermore, the male lead in the 2016 film No Other Love produced by Zhao Wei, was dragged into the controversy for allegedly supporting Taiwanese independence. The female lead was accused of visiting the controversial Yasukuni shrine. Zhao Wei faced heavy criticism, labeled as a director of films supporting Taiwanese independence and a money grabber for Japanese devils. Even old rumors from 2004, alleging that Zhao Wei had bullied a pregnant woman, were revived, severely tarnishing her image. However, all these reasons were just superficial speculations. Many believed that if Zhao Wei had truly been blacklisted for reasons like lack of patriotism or tax evasion, the Chinese government would have issued an official statement. But the deafening silence from both the authorities and Zhao Wei herself only fueled suspicions of a darker conspiracy behind this downfall. Could there be hidden forces, covert manipulations that cannot be made public, behind Zhao Wei's disappearance? And the question remains, what is the truth behind this mysterious veil? Can Zhao Wei overcome this storm and return to the limelight? Although this incident initially seemed to involve only Zhao Wei personally, her husband, businessman Huang Yulong, might also be a key figure. The two married in 2008 and Hava was blacklisted. In 2017, the Chinese newspaper Beijing News estimated that the combined wealth of Zhao Wei and her husband was around 5.7 billion yuan. In 2012, the couple purchased 3 luxury villas in Tsuen, Hong Kong, including one named The Altitude. Also in Singapore, the couple also bought 2 residential properties, one of which is a penthouse with a panoramic view of Singapore. They also bought 4 wineries in France. Notably, in 2011, they spent 40 million euros on a winery in Bordeaux, causing a stir in the French wine world. Zhao Wei also frequently used a private jet to transport guests to visit the winery and had once lent it to Nicolas Tsay for filming his show, Chef Nick. In reality, there's no definitive answer to the source of Huang Yulong's wealth, as he is very secretive and his financial origins remain a mystery. In 2008, Huang Yulong was romantically involved with Miss Hong Kong, 1995 winner Isabella Chow. Before his marriage to Zhao Wei, very few people knew of him. There is information suggesting that Huang Yulong was born in rural Hunan and came from a poor family. So how did a man from such humble beginnings suddenly become a billionaire? Since Zhao Wei's blacklisting, a rumor about Huang Yulong's wealth has been widely circulated online. This rumor originated from Xiaokideo, an official WeChat account of the People's Daily. This account once posted an article claiming that many years ago, Huang Yulong served as the driver for Su Zongheng, then mayor of Shenzhen, and that the two were fellow countrymen. According to news sources, Su Zongheng was arrested in 2009 for corruption involving more than 2 billion yuan. However, in the final verdict, the amount involved was only 30 million yuan and the death sentence was commuted to a suspended death sentence. After his conviction, the remaining 1.9 billion yuan vanished without a trace. At the time, there were rumors that Huang Yulong, Zhao Wei's husband, was actually Su Zongheng's white glove, a middleman for money laundering. After Su Zongheng's conviction in 2011, it was reported that Huang Yulong fled to Singapore and took over Su Zongheng's assets, helping him manage his wealth in Hong Kong. From then on, Huang Yulong's fortune skyrocketed. Even the Hong Kong newspaper One quoted this rumor. So, is Huang Yulong, this mysterious man, ultimately the driver or the white glove of former Shenzhen mayor Su Zongheng, as rumored? Is it true that his sudden rise to billionaire status is due to a shadowy relationship with the political elite? Before Zhao Wei's blacklisting scandal, the China Business Journal also conducted an extensive investigation into Huang Yulong's background in 2017. The investigation completely refuted the rumors of Huang Yulong's overnight riches. According to official information, Huang Yulong was born in 1976. Some sources claim that from a very young age, he left his hometown in Hunan with his father to seek business opportunities, starting with manual labor, like working in brick kilns and trading building materials. Huang Yulong gradually built his fortune and eventually became wealthy. A person who had the opportunity to interact with Huang Yulong commented that although he lacked formal education, he possessed very high emotional intelligence, EQ. This person also firmly asserted that Huang Yulong had never worked as a driver for the former mayor of Shenzhen. Furthermore, Information from the political and legal system of Guangdong province confirmed that Huang Yulong was from Hunan, came from an ordinary family, and had no connection whatsoever to Su Zongheng. Huang Yulong himself spoke out on his personal Weibo account, Dream Builder, Longxing Tianxia, I have never been a driver for any leader. Of course, being a driver is not a shameful job either. Many people who had interacted with Huang Yulong's family also revealed that his first pot of gold came from the cement business in Guangdong. So the question remains, is Huang Yulong a talented entrepreneur who built his career from scratch? Or is he merely a pawn in the hands of the powerful? Or does the truth lie somewhere between these two extremes? It all remains a mystery without a definitive answer. Beyond the glitter of the entertainment world, the couple Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong also demonstrated great ambition in the business realm. They began expanding their financial power in Hong Kong as early as 14 years ago. Since 2010, Huang Yulong, Jiao Wei's husband, has established a vast business network with at least 27 companies in Hong Kong. He not only participated in the casino industry in many countries, but also had close ties with foreign companies. Jiao Wei herself was no less ambitious, becoming a shareholder or director of at least 7 Hong Kong companies. She even served as a director of the Hong Kong Cultural Industry Association, alongside prominent figures like Peter Lam, chairman of Lai Sun Group, Henry Chong, chairman of New World Development, and Albert Young, chairman of Emperor Group. Furthermore, the couple Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong also had a close relationship with Jack Ma, the founder of the Alibaba empire. They frequently appeared together at important events, demonstrating the close ties between the entertainment and business worlds. However, behind the dazzling facade of wealth and power, the couple's financial manipulations in the stock market raised numerous suspicions and controversies. As early as 2014, Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong caused a stir when they purchased shares of Alibaba Pictures, a subsidiary of Alibaba listed in Hong Kong for 3.1 billion Hong Kong dollars, becoming the company's second largest shareholder. Within just 5 months, by April 2015, they sold these shares and reaped a massive profit of 589 million Hong Kong dollars. In May of the same year, Huang Yulong continued to make headlines when he, along with Jack Ma and several others, signed an agreement to purchase shares of Reorient Group, another Hong Kong-listed company, for nearly 3.6 billion Hong Kong dollars. After Reorient Group's stock price soared, Huang Yulong made a staggering profit of 7.4 billion Hong Kong dollars in just one day. These rapid-fire money-making deals took place against the backdrop of the 2015 stock market crisis, which caused heavy losses for small investors in mainland China. This led to public questioning of the transparency and ethics of Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong's business practices. They were accused of using a bare-handed wolf-catching method, meaning making huge profits without any or very little of their capital. By 2016, the couple's shady tactics were finally exposed. In November of that year, the notorious couple Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong embarked on another calculated business venture. They shifted their investment focus to mainland China, establishing Longwei Media with the aim of acquiring Wanjia Culture, and a sports company listed on the stock exchange. Their ambition was enormous. Longwei Media announced its intention to purchase a 29% stake in Wanjia Culture for 3.06 billion yuan, a truly staggering figure. However, there was a ridiculous truth behind this deal. Longwei Media at that time was a newly established company, a mere 2 months old with absolutely no business operations. Total assets, revenue, profits, all zero. Longwei Media's reckless move could not escape the scrutiny of the Shanghai Stock Exchange. They intervened, repeatedly demanding that the company clearly explain every detail of the transaction. Under the pressure of the authorities, Jiao Wei finally had to admit the bitter truth. The 3 billion yuan was nothing but a soap bubble, a financial illusion. She only actually contributed 60 million yuan, while the rest was borrowed money. But the truth was even darker. Investigators traced the 1.5 billion yuan that Jiao Wei borrowed back to a company with a mysterious name, Tibet Yinbixin. And this company, as it turned out, had close ties to the infamous Tomorrow System, a shadow financial organization controlled by Xiao Jianhua, known as the White Glove for the elite. The China Securities Regulatory Commission could not ignore these blatant violations. They launched an investigation and concluded that Longwei Media's investment had caused significant turmoil in the stock market, severely affecting market order and shaking the confidence of small investors. Longwei Media was charged with a series of offenses, including false records, misleading statements, and serious omissions. The couple Jiao Wei and Huang Yulong faced fines of 600,000 yuan for the company and 300,000 yuan each personally. They were also banned from the securities market for 5 years. However, compared to the sophisticated schemes and the enormous sums of money they had made over the years, this punishment seemed like a mere slap on the wrist. In 2020, a seismic event shook the financial world, and Jiao Wei once again found herself caught in the storm. Ant Financial, a subsidiary of the mighty Alibaba empire, specializing in payment and financial services, announced its ambitious IPO plan on both the Hong Kong and Shanghai stock exchanges. This was predicted to be the largest IPO in global history, an event that could reshape the entire financial landscape. And Jiao Wei, never one to miss an opportunity, silently joined this high-stakes game. Under the name of her mother, Wei Qiang, she held shares worth 500 million yuan, a significant sum to say the least. But just when everything seemed to be going according to plan, a sudden shock occurred. Ant Financial's IPO was abruptly suspended, sending the entire financial market into a tailspin. So what really happened? There are many sources suggesting that one of the main reasons for this incident was a controversial speech made by Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, on October 24, 2020. In that speech, he openly criticized the strict financial regulations of the Chinese government, arguing that they were hindering the development of the technology industry. Jack Ma's words were believed to have offended the pride of the top leaders of the Chinese Communist Party, especially President Xi Jinping. As early as 2017, Xiao Jianhua, considered the controller of the Tomorrow system, and a major figure who managed assets for the elite, as mentioned earlier, was suddenly taken away by unidentified individuals from the Four Seasons Hotel in Hong Kong. Later, in 2022, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison in Shanghai for various financial crimes. His conglomerate was also fined 55 billion yuan. In addition, Chinese oil tycoon Yi Jiaming and Wu Xiaowei were also arrested and imprisoned. Lai Xiaomin, the former chairman of a financial company, was sentenced to death in 2021. Hu Xiaoming, CEO of Ant Group, and Huang Zheng, founder of Pinduoduo, both resigned. Jack Ma has also shifted from his previous high-profile behavior and outspokenness to a low-key demeanor in recent years. Was Xiaowei blacklisted due to the couple's illegal activities in the capital market? Or was it because they, along with a group of mainland tycoons and entrepreneurs, had accumulated immense wealth and influence, thus becoming targets of the central government? This is a major question that needs to be answered. From a dazzling star in the entertainment sky, Xiaowei was suddenly erased from all media platforms and vanished without a trace. She became like a phantom, lurking in the thick darkness of mystery. The media frantically searched, but all efforts were like searching for a needle in a haystack. The authorities remained silent, offering no explanation for Xiaowei's blacklisting. She completely disappeared from the limelight, never once appearing in public. Her husband, businessman Huang Yulong, also couldn't escape the storm. Rumors of a massive 600 million yuan debt clung to him like a specter. There were even reports that their entire family had secretly fled to France to seek refuge. However, amidst the darkness, a faint glimmer of hope appeared. In June 2022, Xiaowei unexpectedly surfaced on Instagram with a black and white photo mourning her deceased father. The caption, "I have nothing left," along with cryptic Buddhist verses, tugged at the heartstrings of her fans. However, shortly after, the post was deleted and replaced with a serene picture of a Buddha. 15 months later, in September 2023, Xiaowei appeared again, this time at an airport in mainland China. The image of her holding a Chinese ID card raised questions about the rumors of her emigration. In January 2024, rumors of Xiaowei's death spread like wildfire on Chinese social media, but these were quickly dispelled by photos of her joyfully enjoying life in Harbin. In the pictures, Xiaowei was dressed in a warm coat, holding ice cream and candied hawthorns, a radiant smile on her face against the backdrop of a snowy landscape. However, the joy was short-lived. In April 2024, the couple Xiaowei and Huang Yulong again became the center of public attention when they were embroiled in a series of lawsuits. Xiaowei alone faced 215 lawsuits, and many of her company shares were frozen. Despite having weathered many storms, it seems that the couple has yet to escape their troubles. So why was Xiaowei blacklisted? What did she do to provoke such a strong reaction from the authorities? Can Xiaowei overcome this difficult period and return to her former glory? These questions remain unanswered. Story 5. The peaceful morning of April 7, 2022, in Medford, near Boston, was shattered by a deafening noise. At the parking lot in front of the courthouse, an SUV crashed head-on into a parked Toyota RAV4, creating a horrific collision. The SUV was completely mangled, while the Toyota was crushed like a heap of scrap metal. But the assailant didn't stop there. He stepped out of the vehicle, drew a gun, and opened fire on the person inside the Toyota. The man gripped the gun tightly, his eyes wild, as he stared down at the victim. The sound of gunfire prompted the police officers at the courthouse to rush to the scene. They surrounded the SUV and ordered the assailant to surrender. However, this middle-aged man of Asian descent seemed oblivious to their commands. Maintaining his stance with bloodshot eyes glaring fiercely, his teeth clenched. Just as the police were about to shoot the suspect for armed resistance, another man bravely charged forward, knocking the suspect to the ground. The police quickly subdued and arrested the suspect. The brave man who subdued the assailant was the defense attorney. According to the lawyer, as they both stepped out of the courthouse, his client, Xue Qinghai, showed very strange behavior. His face was pale, his eyes filled with murderous intent, and he tightly pressed his lips together without saying a word. When they reached the parking lot, he suddenly stopped. His gaze scanned around before focusing intensely on the back of a young Chinese man. The young man, startled, turned around and looked directly at Xue Qinghai. That look seemed to awaken the beast within Xue Qinghai. He shoved his lawyer aside, quickly jumped into his SUV, and acted without hesitation. Xue Qinghai accelerated to the maximum and crashed directly into the young man's car. He continued to fire shots, cornering the victim and shooting 5 bullets consecutively. While confronting the police, the lawyer risked his life to close in and subdue him. Based on previous conversations, the lawyer believed that Xue Qinghai was not a violent thug. Perhaps he had been driven to such desperate measures out of sheer desperation. The lawyer believed that his client harbored deep hatred for Wang Chong, the victim in this case, and also the one who had opposed Xue Qinghai in court. Wang Chong had thrown a provocative glance at Xue Qinghai before leaving the courtroom, igniting Xue Qinghai's emotions. From an ideal role model admired by many, Xue Qinghai had now completely transformed. What shocked everyone the most was that these irreconcilable enemies were actually uncle and nephew, both from distinguished families and well-educated. Xue Qinghai graduated from Tsinghua and Harvard and holds a PhD. Wang Kong, his nephew, was also studying at a university in the US with a promising future. As it turned out, they shared a shocking secret involving the spring-like ant. While Xue Qinghai was often in China busy with work, his young nephew and his wife had secretly developed an illicit relationship, leading to the horrifying tragedy that followed. Faced with this situation, Xue Qinghai had to deal with profound emotional wounds. To better understand Xue Qinghai's motives, let's delve into his past. Xue Qinghai was born in 1978 in a small machinery workshop in the suburbs of Tianjin. He had an older sister by a few years. Despite the hardships, his parents always devoted themselves to their children's education. Both siblings were excellent students, consistently achieving high marks in exams. Particularly Xue Qinghai's sister was accepted into a key high school in Tianjin, a cause for celebration but also a significant problem for the family. The burden of tuition was like a heavy stone weighing on their parents' shoulders as the school required boarding and had high fees. At the same time, Xue Qinghai had just entered middle school and quickly proved himself as an outstanding student, even more so than his sister. His sister gave a bitter smile, knowing that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't change her parents' decision. she had to make way for her brother to advance. Ultimately, Xue Qinghai did not disappoint his family's expectations. With his excellent performance, he won a scholarship to study automation at Northwestern Polytechnical University and continued his academic journey. He participated in a program that allowed him to move from undergraduate to master's studies, then earned a PhD in bioinformatics from the Institute of Automation at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and finally became a postdoctoral researcher at Tsinghua University, reaching the pinnacle of the academic pyramid that only a few could achieve. Meanwhile, his sister's educational dreams had to be put on hold. Before turning 16, she decided to leave home to work as a laborer in the South. Every penny she sent home was soaked in sweat and love for her brother. Seeing her brother's success, she gave a warm smile tinged with bitterness. Her life found peace with her husband in similar circumstances. After achieving much success, Xue Qinghai always deeply remembered the silent sacrifices of his family. The feeling of guilt continuously urged him to repay their nurturing grace. Whenever the family faced difficulties, he was always the first to step up. From contributing money to buy or repair a house, to fully supporting his nephew, Wang Chong, his sister's son. To Wang Chong, he was not just an uncle, but also a father figure and a friend, always loving and indulging him to no end. In 2006, Xue Qinghai decided to marry Zhang Li. She possessed a gentle beauty and was a year younger than Xue Qinghai. She came from a well-off family in a major city. Before their marriage, both families consulted a feng shui master for advice. Surprisingly, their birth dates were extremely compatible, as if destined for a happy life together. 2 years after their wedding, their small family welcomed a new member. However, at this time, Xue Qinghai's career entered its most crucial phase. Long days in the lab meant he had little time for family. Understanding her husband's struggles, Zhang Li chose to give up her career to devote herself entirely to caring for their small family. She became the steadfast support that allowed her husband to pursue his scientific passion with peace of mind. Xue Qinghai overcame all challenges and completed his research project with excellence. His studies were quickly acknowledged and highly regarded by the international scientific community. His articles were published in the most prestigious scientific journals, making Xue Qinghai's name shine as a new star in the academic world. This resounding success caught the attention of the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, one of the cradles of the world's leading scientists, which has produced 8 Nobel laureates. Being invited to join this prestigious research community was a significant milestone in Xue Qinghai's career. Without hesitation, he decided to seize this opportunity to continue conquering new heights in his scientific career. Before heading to the U.S., Xue Qinghai spent time with his family, entrusting his parents to his hard-working sister's care. He promised to always honor and repay his parents' nurturing grace, while thanking his sister for her silent sacrifices. By 2008, Xue Qinghai and his wife arrived in the U.S. and began working at the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Here, he quickly established his position in the international scientific community. With his sharp logical thinking, calm demeanor, and meticulous work ethic, he became an indispensable pillar in the research team. Many projects that seemed to be at a dead end were revitalized by him, leading to astonishing breakthroughs. Xue Qinghai's exceptional talent earned admiration and high regard from his colleagues and leading scientists worldwide. Just 1 year after joining the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Xue Qinghai received an incredibly attractive offer from Harvard University, one of the world's most renowned institutions. With a prestigious PhD from Harvard, his career shone even brighter. At the same time, their family welcomed another new member. They decided to settle in Boston, where he began teaching and continued his research. In 2023, an article on Sohu described Zhang Li as a beautiful, youthful woman who knew how to take care of herself. Despite being in her 40s, she maintained a fresh appearance that left many in awe. However, everyday photos showed her beauty to be somewhat modest compared to the praise she received. After following her husband to the U.S., Zhang Li devoted herself entirely to her family. She was not only a capable wife, but also a loving mother to her children. Alongside caring for her family, she actively participated in the Chinese community activities. When speaking of her husband's success, Zhang Li's eyes always shone with pride. In 2016, an unexpected piece of news from his sister left Xue Qinghai astonished. She asked him to sponsor Wang Kong, her only son, to study in the U.S. The boy, who was once small, had now grown into an 18-year-old young man, tall and preparing for the stressful college entrance exams. His sister explained that Wang Kong's academic performance was average, while the pressure of college entrance exams in China was immense. She was worried about her son's future and hoped that Wang Kong would have the opportunity to access a more advanced education. She believed that a degree from a U.S. university would open more doors for her son. Although he knew this decision was not easy, Xue Qinghai could not refuse his sister's request. Over the years, his sister had made many sacrifices to care for their parents and had always supported him in his career. To best prepare for the college entrance exams, Xue Qinghai helped Wang Kong enroll in an English-language school in Boston. He decided to let his nephew live with his family to save costs and for convenience in providing care. With his youth, Wang Kong could help with some household chores, easing the burden on Zhang Li. However, from the outset, Zhang Li was not in agreement with this decision. She worried that having a young man live with her while her husband was off and away could lead to complications. But faced with her husband's determination and concerns about public perception, she eventually acquiesced. Xue Qinghai explained that if Wang Kong stayed in a dormitory, relatives and neighbors would gossip, implying they did not know how to care for family. Unexpectedly, within a short period, Zhang Li's view of Wang Kong changed completely. The young man was not only tall and strong, but also very skillful and considerate. Wang Kong frequently helped Zhang Li with household tasks, from cooking to cleaning, which made her very pleased. The initial reservations between them gradually dissipated, replaced by closeness and warmth. 6 months after arriving in the U.S., Wang Kong took the TOEFL exam for the first time. However, the results were not as expected. With the desire to help her nephew achieve his dreams, Zhang Li, who was fluent in English, decided to tutor him personally. She became his dedicated tutor, imparting valuable knowledge and experience. Thanks to Zhang Li's devoted teaching, Wang Kong made significant progress. In his second attempt at the TOEFL, he excelled, scoring high enough to be admitted to Northeastern University, one of the most prestigious universities in the U.S. His acceptance into the computer science program was a well-deserved reward for his relentless efforts. Though he couldn't match Xue Qinghai's academic excellence, Wang Kong proved himself to be a talented and determined young man. This good news made the entire Xue Qinghai family extremely happy. His sister was deeply moved to see her son's growth and was incredibly grateful to her brother and his wife for their help. Xue Qinghai also gave sincere praise to Zhang Li for her significant role in Wang Kong's success. The family organized a small celebration to mark this important milestone, making the family atmosphere warmer and happier than ever. However, the family's happiness did not last long, as a dark secret gradually came to light, shattering the peaceful picture they had painstakingly built. The illicit relationship between Wang Kong and Zhang Li now became the center of much gossip. Although details about the incident were sparse, public speculation was relentless. Some believed that Wang Kong had taken advantage of the family's trust, planning from the start to achieve his goals. He wanted to quickly obtain a U.S. green card and was not averse to using any means to do so. However, Zhang Li, despite being drawn into the clandestine affair, still retained some sense. She realized that destroying family happiness was a grave and unforgivable mistake. After months of inner turmoil, she finally decided to end the relationship. But the tragedy didn't stop there. An online article revealed a shocking truth that rocked public opinion. In 2019, after completing a major project, Xue Qinghai decided to return home early to surprise his family. However, when he arrived home late at night, the sight before him left him stunned. The wife he had always trusted was lying next to his nephew, Wang Kong, in their marital bed. The shock was so overwhelming, it seemed to shatter Xue Qinghai completely. The wife he had wholeheartedly trusted, the nephew he had deeply loved, were now entangled in a sinful relationship. After being confronted by her husband, Zhang Li finally had to admit the truth. The secret affair between her and Wang Kong had lasted over a year, right in the very house they shared. By day, they played the roles of family members, but when night fell, they became betrayers. This harsh reality completely destroyed the family happiness Xue Chenghai had worked so hard to build. He felt betrayed, his faith in love and family utterly broken. Zhang Li claimed she was seduced by Wang Kong, while Wang Kong blamed her for initiating it. However, the truth was that both were at fault in this immoral relationship. Zhang Li felt lonely and emotionally neglected with her husband, often away, leading her to seek fulfillment outside their marriage. Wang Chong, with his youthfulness and desire for exploration, couldn't resist the allure of the older woman. Meanwhile, Wang Kong, known as a playboy in China, felt lonely and emotionally starved when he came to the U.S. The presence of his beautiful aunt captivated him. Under the same roof, intense emotions gradually developed, causing him to lose his reason. Ignoring moral and social barriers, Wang Kong plunged into this wrong relationship. Faced with betrayal from both his wife and nephew, Xue Chenghai felt as if his world had collapsed. After leaving the house, he had to be admitted to the hospital for psychological treatment. Zhang Li felt immense regret and acknowledged her mistake in engaging in this affair. However, she argued that Xue Chenghai also bore some responsibility for being too engrossed in work and neglecting the family. But Xue Chenghai did not change his decision to divorce. Despite the heartache, he stood firm. That painful scene left an indelible wound in him. However, thinking about his children's future, he decided to keep the divorce private. He did not want his children to witness their parents' breakup and suffer unnecessary psychological harm. He left all his U.S. assets to his wife and children. Whenever he returned to the U.S. to visit his children, he would stay elsewhere. The only condition he set was that Wang Chong had to leave the house. He couldn't accept someone of such moral decay living under the same roof as his children. After a period of mental struggle, Zhang Li finally agreed to Xue Chenghai's divorce terms. She understood that she had caused too much damage to the family and was not worthy of forgiveness. To make amends somewhat, she agreed to leave the home she and Xue Chenghai had built together. The divorce was amicable and did not stir much public attention. However, beneath that facade of peace were lingering emotional wounds. Wang Chong, being cunning and ambitious, quickly saw an opportunity in his uncle and aunt's divorce. At the end of 2020, when Xue Chenghai returned to the U.S. for Christmas with his children, Zhang Li pulled him aside, begging him to remarry for the sake of their children's future. Xue Chenghai immediately refused, but what Zhang Li said next left him stunned. She revealed that Wang Chong wanted to marry her. Surprisingly, after the divorce, even though Zhang Li tried to sever all ties with Wang Chong, he did not give up and continued to harass her. Not only did he show up at their house, but he also appeared at the children's school, making Zhang Li feel extremely worried and insecure. Wang Chong's aim was not only to continue his relationship with Zhang Li, but also to exploit her to stay in the U.S. long-term. With recent changes in U.S. visa policies for international students, particularly for Chinese students, obtaining a work visa in the U.S. had become extremely difficult. Wang Chong hoped that by marrying Zhang Li, he could easily apply for a green card and legally remain in the U.S. Not only would this secure him a U.S. green card quickly, but it would also save him from paying the expensive international student tuition. However, marrying a U.S. citizen, whether out of genuine affection or deceit, carried many difficulties and risks. Thus, Wang Chong targeted his aunt, Zhang Li. Despite their previous tumultuous relationship and the significant age difference, for Wang Chong, it was merely a means to an end. He had no regard for Zhang Li's feelings or the consequences of his actions. When Zhang Li refused, Wang Chong did not hesitate to threaten to spread rumors about their illicit affair on social media. For him, losing face was insignificant compared to a stable life in the U.S. Under Wang Chong's coercion, Zhang Li felt utterly desperate and had no choice but to seek help from Xue Chenghai. The only way she could end the immoral relationship with Wang Chong and escape his threats was by remarrying Xue Chenghai. Hearing his ex-wife's pleas, Xue Chenghai found himself in a difficult position. The pain he had endured was too great for him to consider remarrying Zhang Li. However, He couldn't stand by and watch his ex-wife and children be harassed by Wang Chong. Therefore, he decided to meet with Wang Chong, hoping to persuade him with reason and emotion. In reality, Xue Qinghai's thinking was too simplistic. Wang Chong responded with a dismissive laugh, "No need to marry Zhang Li. Just introduce me to an American woman to marry. Whether it's a real or fake marriage doesn't matter, as long as I can get a green card. By the way, I don't have a dime to spend on this, so you have to handle everything for me." Wang Chong's brazen words infuriated Xue Qinghai, who retorted sharply, "You slept with my wife and destroyed my family. Frankly, I'm ashamed to even say this, but now you want me to help you apply for a green card?" Upon hearing Xue Qinghai's furious words, Wang Chong lost control and smashed the cup in his hand. If it weren't for a neighbor hearing the noise and intervening, who knows what would have happened next. In the following days, Wang Chong incessantly called Xue Qinghai and Zhang Li, using vicious language to threaten them. He called Zhang Liye an old shoe and referred to Xue Qinghai as a turtle. Finally, Wang Chong issued a threat. "My student visa is about to expire. If you don't help me with my residency, I'll go after your children." Xue Qinghai was extremely worried when he realized Wang Chong had crossed a line. He decided to meet Wang Chong again to negotiate, but the conversation only escalated into further. Wang Chong even attacked Xue Qinghai, leading to injuries and broken glasses. The situation became dangerous as Wang Chong continuously stalked and harassed the Xue Qinghai family. Zhang Li and Xue Qinghai began to suspect Wang Chong had mental issues. They gathered evidence, including threatening messages Wang Chong sent to Zhang Li to present to the court. In those messages, Wang Chong wrote, "I have nothing left to lose. If I don't destroy your family, I'll end my life." Eventually, in 2020, the court issued a restraining order against Wang Chong, forcing him to keep his distance from the Xue Qinghai family. The nightmare seemed far from over for Xue Qinghai. More than 2 months later, as he was preparing to return home for the Lunar New Year, he received a scathing call from his sister. She blamed him for not helping their nephew with his immigration issues and for taking the matter to court. Xue Qinghai was both surprised and hurt. He wondered why he was being blamed by his own family when he was the victim. After some reflection, he realized that perhaps his sister had been manipulated by Wang Chong, who might have provided her with misinformation, leading to a misunderstanding of the situation. After the restraining order took effect, Wang Chong called back home, spinning a tear-jerking tale to his mother. He claimed his visa was about to expire and that Xue Qinghai not only refused to help but also kicked him out of the house. He even fabricated stories that he had been wronged by Xue Qinghai and Zhang Li, forcing him to live on the streets. Hearing her son's plight, the mother, who already loved her son dearly, believed his words even more. She immediately called her mother and relayed the story. However, the grandmother remained calm. She knew her grandson's character and doubted he could commit such cruel acts. She suggested they wait for Xue Qinghai to return home to clear up the matter. But perhaps due to years of suppression, Xue Qinghai's sister decided to pressure him by threatening to cut off financial support for their mother unless he helped resolve Wang Chong's immigration issues. In this tense and troubling context, Xue Qinghai's mental state deteriorated. As the restraining order was nearing its end, he grew increasingly worried. He consulted his lawyer about the possibility of extending the order, but the response was not optimistic. The lawyer explained that since Wang Chong had complied with the order so far, extending it could be challenging. However, Xue Qinghai couldn't find peace. He remembered Wang Chong's terrifying behavior and realized that if the order was lifted, his life and family's stability would be at risk again. "I'm trying hard to overcome this fear. I've moved to a new place, living with friends from the church to seek some peace." As the lawyer predicted, the court rejected the request to extend the restraining order on April 7, 2022. This news was a devastating blow to Xue Qinghai. He felt desperate and helpless, uncertain about the future. The image of Wang Chong giving him a provocative look in court only added to his anger and fear. However, an unexpected development occurred when reporters interviewed Wang Chong's roommate. The roommate revealed that Wang Chong was not the violent and uncontrollable person Xue Qinghai portrayed him to be. He was rather quiet, hardworking, and sometimes stubborn. He even shared with his roommate that he was afraid Xue Chenghai might seek revenge. This revelation surprised the roommate, suggesting that Xue Chenghai might have misinterpreted Wang Cheng's look. After his arrest, Xue Chenghai broke down, sobbing, "Wang Cheng drove me to the edge. I couldn't take it anymore." Ultimately, he was charged with murder and detained awaiting trial. In the final court appearance, Xue Chenghai looked haggard with sunken eyes and a vacant stare. His once pristine white shirt was now crumpled, no longer reflecting the elegance of a scholar. When the sentence was read, he was stunned, tears streaming down his gaunt face. The case of a nephew sleeping with his aunt and being killed by his uncle quickly became the center of attention within the Chinese community, sparking fierce debates. Many harshly condemned Wang Cheng's actions, calling him a family destroyer unworthy of forgiveness. Others expressed sympathy for Xue Chenghai, citing Wang Cheng's continuous harassment as the reason for his loss of control. An old friend of Xue Chenghai shared, he seemed pushed to his limits. Wang Cheng was not just ungrateful, but also a family wrecker, turning Xue Chenghai's life into hell. However, violence is never acceptable. The law will deliver the final judgment, but Xue Chenghai's words, "I couldn't take it anymore," raise a big question. What is the limit of endurance? Were there other factors beyond Wang Cheng's actions that drove Xue Chenghai to this point? Deep-seated within traditional family values often lies an implicit debt logic. Phrases like, "I did this for you, so you must do that for me," turn acts of help into moral obligations, making the recipient feel indebted and bound by their decisions. In Xue Chenghai's case, the sacrifices of his sister and wife were seen as debts to be repaid. But do we ever question whether these sacrifices were truly voluntary? Did his sister genuinely want to abandon her dreams to care for the family? Was Zhang Li truly happy being a full-time wife? Or were they simply shouldering societal expectations placed on women? Their sacrifices, products of traditional family values, inadvertently became invisible chains binding Xue Chenghai. As the beneficiary, he was expected to repay by taking on responsibilities beyond his capacity. Ignoring these expectations would label him ungrateful, but in trying to meet them, he was caught in an endless cycle. Legally, Xue Chenghai had every right to choose his own life. However, family and societal pressures made him feel obligated to solve his relatives' problems. Under this pressure, he went beyond his limits, leading to tragic outcomes. Xue Chenghai's tragedy exposes a sad reality. Using familial bonds to bind each other can have unforeseeable consequences. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.